All right, welcome to Producers. We're here live in Bryan, and we've also streaming this to Hillsboro, and then we'll be recording this for our YouTube and Facebook channels as well. So we've got a good presentation today from Mr. Jeff Connor, a senior specialist, food specialist with Purina Animal Nutrition. And he's going to start off today talking about minerals, but he's also here to answer any other questions you've got about nutrition as we prepare for this upcoming winter season. Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Everett. So, senior specialist, been here quite a while. As far as I just did my 35th anniversary with this company. So I've been around a little bit. But today we're going to talk about the catalyst of longevity and basically mineral, because that gets kind of important. So our session goes with the catalyst of longevity with mineral, and then at the very end I'm going to talk a little bit about the Purina Plus tag system that we're using. But we're going to talk about the goal, the plan, and the action that we'll do in this deal. So when we look at mineral, it's kind of funny if we compare it to something that everyone understands, an old machine. We have fuel, operation, and catalyst. Energy becomes the fuel, protein becomes the oil, and then minerals like the spark plug. So we're looking at that when we look at mineral, so that we're working on everything that we need for that animal. So your take-home message is we're going to talk first about cattle need mineral supplementation. And we're going to talk a little bit why. And really, when we look at the effects of mineral deficiencies, on the right-hand side, immunity, growth, fertility, we usually don't see those when they go down. But when we get to the bottom two clinical signs, that's usually when it happens there. We've gone too far on mineral deficiency. So poor nutrition, rebreeding delays, difficulty calving, calf health issues, cows cold, lost profit. Those are things that we'll have as we get further down that line if we don't meet that mineral. So why are minerals essential for cattle performance? When we look at all the minerals, why are they important? If you look at that, feed intake, the blue numbers are what we call the major minerals. The red ones are the minor ones. When you go around either feed intake, fertility, nervous system, fetal development, there's a mineral basically associated with that. When we get down to hair coat, skin, hoof, disease resistance, we're talking about the minor minerals there, but they're very important when we look at our system. So that kind of gives you an idea, and we're going to talk a little bit about those, but it is an important deal when we look at our cattle. So mineral nutrition is complicated. The mineral content's the same as mineral availability, bioavailability. Content and availability of forages is constantly changing. We're not going to have the same forage all the time. It's going to change throughout the year. So there may be times that they eat more or they may eat less from that standpoint. And then mineral availability of forages is currently not fully understood. Even though you may have a great pasture and you use a lot of fertilization on that, it will change over time as it gets older. And when we look at the forages, you've got vegetative, and you'll see that in the spring when the grass really comes out. We see it sometimes. This year was an unusual year because of all the rain we had. We had a lot of fresh grass, so it was good from that standpoint. And then traditional, we usually see that in the summertime. A lot of times, it's already went through some, so it's still there, but it's not as nutritious as it should be in the reproduction. When we get to the winter, there may be plenty of it, but it's not, from a mineral standpoint, it's not all there. So that's usually when mineral becomes very important to feed to your animals. So what you already know, mineral content of forages changes year round. We know that. Most forages is deficient in key minerals. There again, we looked at those three. So you'll see that as we go along in the years. So if we look at what we call the big three, copper, zinc, and phosphorus. On copper, if it's a legume, we'll meet the requirement for copper. But the other forages that we use aren't really up to what we call the availability that the animal needs at that time. On zinc, it doesn't matter what it is, a legume, fresh, cool season, native grass, we've got to feed copper or zinc at that time so we can meet those requirements. And then on phosphorus, usually in the fall you don't have much because you don't have a lot of forage growing at that time. In the spring, when it first comes out, our phosphorus is great. But then as we go along, it'll kind of drop down. So, it's usually important that we feed that product during that time so we meet all that. So phosphorus is called the master minerals required to make energy. If you look at, and being very basic from that standpoint, if you look at glucose, which is sugar that the animal has, glucose with 3 phosphorus minerals typically forms ATP, and that's usable energy. So if we've got a mineral that's got plenty of phosphorus and we've got glucose out there, we're meeting that animal's needs at that time. So it's very simple, and our PhD that does this can go into it, and I'm not getting into it because he can make 30 minutes out of that slide, and I'm not going to do that to y'all today. So, but I'll answer questions after we're done. This one here is kind of important. This was done back in 1940 at the King Ranch. Basically, they had a group of cattle being fed phosphorus and a group of cattle that weren't fed phosphorus. And basically what it says is that no phosphorus versus one that fed phosphorus, they got 50 more pounds per calf. They also had 90% of those cows had calf, where only 65 didn't have calf. So it was very important that phosphorus is very important to an operation. So we need to look at that. And we'll get, depending on what type of phosphorus we use, we'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. It kind of gets into that. But phosphorus became very critical because cattle need that. If we look at relative bioavailability of phosphorus sources, if you look at monocalcium and monosodium phosphate, they're 100%. What we use is great, but when you talk about that, it's a very expensive product. And this year it's even worse because phosphorus is going crazy from this standpoint. We've used a dicalcium phosphate, which is 98%, which is still a good product. And then as you get down the line, if you look at a tag, sometimes it's kind of funny to see if you're looking at a cheap mineral. A lot of times, if you look at the mineral source they use, I've seen the low fluoro rock phosphate in there, 55%, and even some soft rock every once in a while. It's easy to get sometimes, and it doesn't cost very much, but the animal won't eat as much as that. So it may be in there, and it may show on a tag, but it's not going to be available to the animal from that standpoint. So skipping mineral will drive down your herd profitability. Small weak calves, decrease weaning weights, poor immunity, increase sickness, decrease milk production, reduce later conception. We need to have mineral. And it's kind of funny, if any of y'all have wives, today when a woman gets pregnant, they usually go to the doctor and they put them on a mineral, okay? Because they need that, the baby that she's growing needs all this stuff. It's becoming very evident we're doing the same thing on the cattle side. We just didn't look at it that hard. So the animal needs it just as much. So the other key, we talked about needing mineral supplementation. Now we're going to talk about mineral must be consumed to have value. So if you look at the minerals that we have today, we have a flexible, convenient solution. We look at a targeted intake. We've done a lot of research in Purina for over 125 years. Weather resistant, we want to look at something that's weather resistant. Balanced mineral nutrition, we're looking at stuff that's going to be used by the animal. And then, of course, we've got different minerals for different parts of the country. And then today we have it listed in a tub and a loose form. So it's a little bit different than we've had in the past. It's it fits whatever source will work better for you. So a consistent targeted intake, no consumption means no mineral, nutritional benefits. So you want them to eat some copper, or you want them to eat some minerals so they get copper and everything else. Because if you don't, you'll have reduced urn health and reproduction. So it's like getting your kid to eat some vegetables. Some of them like it, some of them don't like it, from that standpoint. But we're trying to do the same thing. So with the research farm, we do lots of tests. And we're trying to, at Purina, come up with a palatability research that means that when you look at it in that bag, we've done a lot of tests that we're going to have some good product. So this was a test done years ago, up until 2019, and basically on 144,000 cows, we wanted on bagged mineral, we were trying to reach a 4 ounce per day. And in all those cows that we tested, we came up with 4.01. So I think we hit the target that we were trying to do from that. So they got to eat it, and we tested it, so we ended up there. The other thing is, some people won't eat that mineral a lot of times. So we came out with this tub, basically, which is great. The only thing about that, they eat a little bit more of it. And there's good things and bad things. I'll tell you about that tub. It costs a little bit more than the bag mineral. Pluses and minuses when you look at it. I would tell you the best thing, if you ever feed it, I would find a 20-inch tire, because the first time they fight over it and they flip it over, it'll be hard, okay? But when it flips over, and overnight you'll come out there and it's all gone, because it just slid out overnight. Because basically what it'll do, that top will basically suck moisture out of the air to about 1/4 of an inch. And when cows come up and they lick it off, it's pretty easy at that point. The rest of it, it's as hard as a rock, so they may not lick on it at that point. So they'll walk away a little bit, and it'll soften up a little bit. When it flips over, because it's kind of a slow process, it'll slowly leak out of that tub, or all of it will be on the ground. So I have had many talks from people about that because they weren't happy. So I would tell you, find a 20-inch tire. So, and a lot of these tire shops will give it to you because they don't want to pay the fee to get it recycled. So that will work. But the test we did over 34,000 cows, our target was 6 inches. We came up with 5.63. So we felt pretty good at that point that it worked out pretty good on the tubs. So when we look at Purina, we have a full line of research tested and field proven mineral options. And you saw some of those that we tested. There's some other things that we look at also. Our minerals have a proper balance of all 14 essential macro and micro minerals to help address those 4 deficiencies and meet the cattle requirements year-round. And specific formulas are available to meet certain conditions and seasons. So if you look at this one here, that's an all-season that you can feed anytime. This one, we don't really have fescue so much as we did up in Nebraska, Kansas, in that area. That was specifically for fescue. This one is magnesium, which we'll have a couple of times a year that you might want to use it. And then the one on the end's got fly control in it. So there are 4 different ones that we have, and there may be, there may be 6 or 7 minerals that go on this year-round, depending on what part of the state that you're in or the country. But this here, when we look at minerals, we're trying to create a mineral with this, and we have wind and rain, so that you don't end up with a product. And I'll tell you the reason you run across that is weather resistant. We have a deal called wind and rain storm formula. Basically, if it rains on most minerals that we have, and we make some minerals today like that, if it rains, it may get as hard as a rock. And they really can't get that 4 ounces that you're trying to get. So wind and rain it's a formula that's got something on it that it may form a light coat on it, but as soon as it's licked on, it breaks apart. So it's not as hard as the other things. And when we look at this, it's a difference. I mean, it will make a block on some of those things. And then, I've seen some minerals that we went out and we've done some research with, and it'll be hard as a rock, and you got to get it out there or dump it out, and it's not really doing much for them. So the weather resistant, the wind and rain, that's something that we do that we're very proud of. Some other companies have come out with it, but we're very proud of that because we want a mineral that any cow can eat at any time of the year. So Storm Formula, that's our patented deal, the best in class as far as weather resistant. So, and I know that most of the products sold here has that formula on the bag. The 2 products that we sell and probably here, this 7.5. Oh, sorry about that. This 7.5% phosphorus, that's one that's very popular here. As you get further east, where the hay, I see a lot of hay grown out when you get Huntsville, Crockett, Palestine up there. The all-season 5 seems to be more popular to them at that point. But 7.5 from here, and then you go west, that's a very popular product that we have. We still sell the 12, but they just don't eat as much of the 12 because that phosphorus will limit how much they can eat from that standpoint. So when we look at flies, also, there is a discomfort. If we don't do something with that, they'll kick, they'll stomp, head slinging, tail swishing. It'll cost about $40 a cow, basically, when you look at that. And in the industry, that's over $1 billion lost every year because of flies. And I've been out on some places, and you'll see some flies be covered with flies. And then I'll go to another ranch down the road, and they may not have as many flies because they're using fly control. I would tell you the one thing that you'll see, if you're using a fly control, it will not kill all the flies. But if it's down to a number less than 200 on the whole cow, the company thinks that's great. The ones that make that Central Life Sciences. So that's better than having a white cow that's all black because all the flies are on it. So these are the products that we have today, and then the wind and rain tubs. So that's something that's available to y'all.
that we could use from that standpoint. The other thing we use is Zinpro, and it's an organic that is those 4 micro minerals, manganese, copper, cobalt, and zinc, is kind of attached to that. It would be absorbed into the body, you know. So if you look at our tag today, our regular wind and rain may be 250 parts per million on copper. In a Zinpro that's got an organic copper in it that's attached to an amino acid, it'll slip through the body a lot easier across the vessels and be absorbed a lot better. It may only be about 750 to 100 or 1,000 parts per million. So it's a little bit less than we have if it's not organic, but that makes it good because you'll pay a little bit more for that, but the animal will get more of that product. So we also make a Pro Cycle. And I was talking to a guy earlier. A Pro Cycle is basically a mineral that is assigned to people that have purebreds. And more specifically, this individual did not have a breeding system, so he bred year round. If you're going to feed that product, you're looking at about 60 days before they go into breeding through their breeding system. So it's got all the Zinpro in it. It's also got some prebiotics and probiotics in there to help that animal do some things other than the mineral to help that animal along. So it costs a little bit more, but you know, you're getting ultimate bioavailability. You get better fiber digestion, and it's improving consumption and weather resistant. Those are products that I guess it's new in the market. We've had it probably 2 years. We have it in a tub as well as a loose deal, but you're going to pay a little bit more for that when you look at it. And there again, it talks about the flavoring, the wind and rain, the full inclusion of ProPath, and that's kind of the probiotic that we use for that. Pure Firm. Some of the things that we're doing here is to meet that animal, especially if you want to get, you want to up your conception rates. You've got a herd that you want to improve what you're doing so that you get the best calves out of the deal. This is a great mineral for that. You don't have to feed it year round. Like I said, 60 days before you breed them through breeding season is a great time to use it. But if you've got where you're not having a breeding system, you're breeding all the time, then those guys will feed it year round. There again, Purina has your mineral, and we hope that, we talk to a lot of people. There are things that you need, and we'll sit down with you and talk about those minerals to make sure that we've got a product that you're looking for from that standpoint. So we've kind of met that deal. Need mineral supplementation. The mineral must be consumed to have value, and we have a full line of Purina products that are available. The other thing is, it's kind of like that engine. We hope that, especially with Availabilit, that we meet some of those things, that you've got a well-tuned engine, and that we've met the weatherability, the palatability, and the bioavailability of all those animals when you use those products. This here, when you look at all the minerals that we've got, that's how complicated it can be when you look at those things. And sometimes, depending on what you use, sometimes some of them will block other minerals from being absorbed. So it's a very busy deal, whether you're talking blood production from copper and iron to reproduction. Those 6 things there are very important for those animals to reach those things. The other thing that we have, and we talk a little bit about this, is depending upon, I put a mineral out and they're not eating it, A lot of it could be where you've got the mineral set. If it's sitting right next to the water, you know, we may move it out a little bit. If they're eating too much here, we may move it back a little bit to kind of get that they're eating it right, to a point that we meet all three deals, so the animals get what they want. They do a little traveling to eat some hay, some grass, water, mineral, even with supplementation we use, so that they use that whole deal. Because really, you know, they're a forage digester. That's really what they're doing. So we're just adding something there to help them with their forage digestion. Mineral blocks, this is usually a popular one. Most of the mineral that we have today is complete. It's got the salt in there, so you don't have to feed it some salt. But with my dad, when he was still alive, my grandfather fed salt all the time. So my dad said he's going to feed salt. We had many discussions that you don't need to do it. But, you know, my grandpa did it. He was going to do it. So, you know, and whether he used the brown one, which is the all season, or not the multi, because it's got some of the things in there. When you look at the animals that you're trying to feed today, they'd have to eat 2.25 pounds of salt a day to get their copper requirement, which is about 55 cents. If they want zinc, you know, 18 pounds of salt they'd have to eat a day. That's a lot. I don't think they can eat 18 pounds of salt. You know, so you look, basically a bag of Purina Wind and Rain mineral, that's would equal about 18 salt blocks if you're looking at it. So when we're looking at this, all the stuff that's in there is in the right ratios, that you don't have to do that, buy the salt. It does cost a little bit more, but we're trying to put it together that you'll get everything that you need from that standpoint. The other thing, I've got an individual outside of Temple that he feeds 7.5 and he thinks his cows eat too much of it. So he's going to add salt to it. Well, without, by itself alone, there's 2,400 parts of copper in there. There's 7,200 of zinc and 300 vitamin E. When he adds 25 pounds in that, he just cut his copper down. And I've seen him mix 50 pounds with 50 pounds of salt. You know, it really took it from that standpoint. They ate less of it, but they probably didn't get everything that they needed from that standpoint. So you really don't have to do that.
What's the significance of that vitamin E?
A little bit to do with the reproduction part of it, but I would lie if I said any more than that. I can when we get done, I can show you some stuff printed up that'll do that. But I'm not a doctor like John the clerk is, so he can talk minutes about it. I know enough where to look on a piece of paper to show you, but that's kind of what we're talking about there. There again, your macro minerals that are usually a percentage. Your micros, you know, that's parts per million when you look on a tag. So they don't take very much when you look at that. So that kind of, you'll see that on a tag a lot of times, but how they're listed. The other thing, when you look at Availabilit, it's an organic. So, you know, on a weaned calf, the return's about 4 to 1 as far as how much they'll take, because as far as, oh my God, as far as an organic deal, they may not take all of it because it might get blocked, where an organic one being attached to an amino acid is absorbed a lot easier, so it doesn't take near as much from that standpoint. So the other thing with Zinpro, and that's who makes the Availabilit for us that we have, it'll help lower your calving intervals, 30% improvement in conception rates. We see an increase in pregnancy rates. So, you know, if you had, we fed it before where a producer may have 75% or 80%, we'll see that number go up into the 90s a lot of times because it's available to all the animals. The embryonic survival rates a lot better. Calving rate, you see a lot more calves born from that standpoint. So Zinpro has been good for us a lot of times. And we're using one of their products that today Purina has the only access to it. It's a Pro Zinpro product. So we've got it for about 5 years. So we're testing it for them and it's working real good for us. What we learned from bulls, Zinpro works great in bulls. When you look at fertility, it'll help their fertility as well as their soundness, okay? And it's usually, if you're gonna spend some money on a bull, you wanna make sure it's good from that standpoint. Through calf health, through prenatal minerals, these are some of the things, and I won't read all of them, but these are some of the things that you'll see an improvement in with those. And there again, if you look at some of the macro and micro minerals, you can see what's important, like muscle formation, phosphorus is used, sulfur is used, selenium, zinc, they're very important of that deal. So you want to allow them to have enough to do some of those things. On the other side, at calving, you know, you'll get increased milk production, your fertility will be better, improved system development, immune. So that's great when you look at that standpoint. There again, if you look at those, the macro and micro minerals, it shows you some of the benefits that you'll see when we look at these products. And then during lactation, there again, you know, she's feeding that calf. She's got to have everything that she can from a mineral standpoint to provide that to the calf. So there again, you're looking at those 6 things that will help that cow during her lactation. There again, looking at that deal, it's got a lot of things that will help with that animal meet some of those things. And then this here, when you look at all those, this was what we had used years ago and show it. It was very confusing, but this was, when you're showing this to a person, this is what those micro and macro minerals will do if you provide them all in the right amount. So it's very confusing when you look at that. The screens we used before broke it down a little bit easier, but this is what we used years ago when I started, and it became very confusing to a lot of people. So Zinpro, we're very proud of that. We noticed that our higher end minerals utilize better pathways and bioavailability for these animals. And we talk about inorganic. We were talking a while ago. The sulfates are basically will be digested from that standpoint, but a lot of times they're not very cheap from that standpoint, or you can't find them. I've seen some minerals when you look at the tags that have oxides. They're very cheap, but you know, if you're looking at iron oxide, none of it's really. It may show on a tag and it may show up on a tag as far as the deal, but it doesn't really help that animal from that standpoint. So a lot of times when you look at a tag and see what's in there, you'll see some of the differences in those. When you get to the organic ones on the very end, it has, you know, 85 was the lowest, up to, you know, 320. So those organics are digested a little bit differently by that animal, but they'll use those micros a lot better. And when we talk about having horn flies out there, supplying something, especially when you're out there and you see a lot of flies here and on the bottom and, this, kicking, stomping, tail wishing, standing in water, these will reduce our distribution as far as grazing out there. So they have the IGR being out there being used today for in some minerals to help fight that deal. So, and this is, I guess, the deal on the Altosid. It's easy, they eat it. But it's not digested by the animal, so there's nothing wrong. But they'll poop it out. It'll end up in the manure. That's where all that takes place, and it basically just stops that larvae from basically growing on order. It'll kill it in a reproduction age. So, but usually it takes about 3 to 4 weeks. When you put it out, it's not gonna happen the first day because it's going to take about that long for the fly to insert that egg in there and then that larvae growing up. So usually, when you're doing that, a lot of times they'll tell you to spray the animals down with a spray or something or a dust just to give you a little headway, and it'll work after that point. Now we're going to talk about the tags. Before, there was a program, the 45-day when I was at A&M, if you used this vaccine program and you fed them a certain way, it should treat the cattle a lot better and they'll be worth a lot more money to you. Well, Purina has done a bunch of tests at the research farm that we have in St. Louis. And we came up with this program, and basically, if you vaccinate the animals, and this was done a couple during the summer, if you have no vaccines, which is very low, it kind of put the value on those calves. The more you vaccinate it, and there's some that they vaccinate twice and 3 times, it added the value of what that calf was worth, basically. So in our program, we've got a starter program that you need to feed at least so many days, and it could be a starter ration, a pre-con, which is probably our most popular one. We don't do the stress care in this part of the world, and then also feeding a stress tub to it. And that's kind of this deal here. And all it is a mineral tub that's got the Availabilit in it. So they got something with them when you're feeding them a starter feed. And then basically what this says, if an animal is, if he's shipped right off the cow, he may be worth $600 or $834. Basically, when you start weaning less than 28 to 45 or more than 45s, you can raise that over, $900, $932 is what you can do. But it'll be a healthier calf from that standpoint. And with the tags, there's a program that some of the sales that you go are preconditioned cows. So a lot of people will look at those because they've been through this program. They may have a tag or something. We came out with this red tag to kind of do that same thing. So, and it's that one right here is what we have. So, feed a starter, feed a stress tub in there, that or a Availabilit tub, weaned and fed for 45 days prior to sale. The vaccination, and we've worked with several companies that'll list that, the different ones they can do. And it can be modified live. It could be the other ones that are available. There are some of the things that we have that are available. And then, they say, if you deworm them at that point, then, whoever buys those cattle will be a lot feel a lot better because they got better cattle basically working. So that's the Purina deal, and like I said, we can work on that with you. Right now, you know, we're out of tags, so it's about 4 weeks to order tags. So if, you know, if you want to do it and you're kind of that, you know, you got that much time, we'll order the tags so it'll be available. But that is the program basically. So I'm a little over time, but well, that right now, you know, chemicals you can't buy, some of the plastic things or the lids. You know, we didn't know this was going to happen when they started it last year. It was kind of a start that we kind of messed with in the Midwest. It worked great. And the sales that we had with those cattle did great. I mean, they did great, you know, so we kind of spread it out. Well, the COVID deal happened. It's so harder to get things now. It's not just tag, it's other things that, you know, so it's a great program. I just tell you, it's probably not the best time period to do it unless we could get tags. I know Hillsboro, the store at Hillsboro had some tags. And we got a guy on that. He got everything that he needed, but you know, Everett and I talked. We don't have the tags here. We've ordered them. We don't know when they're going to be in. They haven't told us yet. So that's the easiest way I can put it. Yes, finally. But there again, we had some ingredients in there that we were having a hard time getting. The ones that it's big up north, and those guys, I'm not going to say they get first choice, but you know, in the tubs, we couldn't make it at Clifton at that tub plant. They were all made at Fremont. So most of those were being taken by Fremont, but Clifton's supposed to be up and running in the next 20 days, 20 to 28 days. It will be up and running now. So we'll have that back down here finally. So we can buy it in bags. Yeah, not a problem in bags, but yeah. And, you know, y'all get most of your mineral from Wichita, so it's not a problem in Wichita to get that problem, because that's our biggest mineral plant that we have today. So, okay.